We got our brand new 9-inch laid out here. It's already got the Willwood disc brakes on it. It's still wrapped up. We did, when we got it, pulled this side off just to look and make sure our brake package. Got all our suspension parts laid out. We're starting to mock it up. Let's get this unwrapped, check it out, and then get back to work on welding on the car. There we have it untaped. It's a beautifully painted 9-inch. It's an aftermarket housing. It's got the brake line already made up for it. It's got the braided stainless steel lines that are going to come over and hook into here. I'm not sure why they didn't hook those up, but we'll hook these up. Of course, you have your line coming from the car that goes in there, your vent tube. It's got all, like I said, all the brackets already welded on for the Speedtech suspension. Here's the track bar, or the panhard bar. Here's your lower mounts. And then, of course, we have this mount that comes back here and hooks here. We do have to put this mount on the front. This will actually go right here on those bolts, and this will come down and hook to the front part of that torque arm. But it looks absolutely beautiful. Nice gloss, shiny. They painted the center section red, and of course it's got the Willwood disc brakes already installed. 4 piston calipers. It's got the black rotors. Very nice. All right, first step in this whole process, we got 2 roller wheels bolted to the axle. Got it jacked up. We got our bolts taken out of the pinion bearing support, and we're putting on the Speedtech bracket. So they supply longer bolts. We'll get this put on there. I think they torqued to 55 foot-pounds when we're done. Let's get this put on there, and we can start mocking up some other stuff. We have our bushings here in our sleeve. This goes in the large end at the end of the torque arm. Snaps right in. Now we can start getting this put together, not back together. It's the first time it's going together actually. So the torque arm is going to slide under here. We do have our through bolt for the back here. There's a tab on the bottom side of the axle. We'll put that in there. Here's the washer and the nut for it. The bottom of this is threaded, and it goes down through here. There is this wishbone that goes on the bottom, and the bolts that go up through and thread into the bottom of this. All right, we got this bolt fit through. There is some powder coating on this rear axle, and it's a little thick, so you gotta kind of get rid of some of that to get that bolt to go through. And one thing I quickly learned is I was mocking it up upside down. So this torque arm goes angled side down. No big deal. It's just the way it's offset for the pinion, and everything lines up. So now we're bolted on in the back. Now we'll get our wishbone down here, get our bolts put up through, and get them screwed into the bottom of this pinion support. And we're going to leave everything loose for now. We may have to shim that. No big deal. We won't really be able to tell until we get weight on the car. But for mock-up purposes, this will work just fine. And there we have our mock-up of our torque tube. As you can see. Now we can... Everything, like I said, is loose right now. We're going to have to adjust this some. But now we can wheel this around with no issues. And... start mocking it up in the car. This is going to be one sweet setup. This is the part of the build that's actually really nice to see stuff actually coming together. Once we get this painted and put this stuff in for the last time, that's when it'll really come together. But for now, seeing all this nice new shiny stuff, all this nice high-tech suspension going into this car, makes it all worth it. All right, a little further mock-up. We took the front crossmember off the track bar and we put it up on the car itself. Speedtech does give you, these are actually solid aluminum bushings, and they do supply these. Obviously the subframe would be coming back through here, the open part, and the subframe would be sandwiched in between these two bushings. But for now, we have this mock-up. It's still loose, of course. We can move it around quite a bit. We'll probably loosen this up a little bit so we can really tilt this down to get that to go in. But for now, that all actually looks really good. It's flat to the floor where it should be, and it's got a small gap, so it's not going to rattle or anything like that. Still assembling all of our pieces here. We have our swivel link bars. We have our new spring pockets. Of course, we have a new bolt that goes through. Grease fitting is going to stick down. The swivel end of it's going to be towards the front of the car. And there's this applied spacer that goes in between the end of the arm and the pocket. And of course, that's going to go towards the center of the car. Actually, the bar goes towards the center of the car. So the spacer goes on the outside of the car. So we'll get both of these mocked up. Probably bolt these to the rear housing. And of course, your grease fitting, once you want your grease fitting pointing down so you can actually service that. So you won't be able to get a grease gun on the inside of it. All right, guys, there it is mocked up. What a sweet setup. I know I keep saying that, but this is a really, really nice setup here. I really like how it's going together. Everything's falling right together, just the way it should. We're going to finish assembling our Viking shocks. I did run into one issue. I can't get the spring compressed far enough by hand to get those cups on the top there. So we're going to have to somehow compress those springs. I do have a spring compressor, but I really don't want to scratch the powder coating. So for right now, we're going to put these bushings top and bottom in. The top takes the thicker, so it's going to take a smaller bolt. The bottom has the complete weight of the car on it, so it takes the thinner of the bushings and takes a bigger bolt. So we'll get them pushed in. An easy way to push them in is just take a pair of pliers like that, adjustable pliers, and let me set the camera down here. You can adjust these out, grip that nice and gently. They go right in. Try and keep them even, and they just slip right in. You can readjust. Let's get this bottom one in a while. We'll readjust our pliers and take it the rest of the way in. All right, guys, we decided to chuck it up in this spring compressor anyway, and we actually made out pretty good. Not bad at all. We got those on there. They're definitely a little tricky. There's not a whole lot of tension at this point because we're adjusted all the way down. But anyway, we're together and they're looking good, so we can get these thrown on there and finish mocking this up. All right, we're gonna mock up our coilover install, and I got ahead of myself and put these bars in. This hardware actually comes through. This may be the wrong spot, but this is where we're gonna start out. I'm gonna put this short bolt and washer and the second bolt up coming through. We have this billet mount. It actually spaces over the bottom of the coilover so it doesn't hit the bracket, and we're going to thread that on. Once we have that threaded on, we can actually just kind of twirl it around. We can hold the back side of it there. Once that's tight, then we'll take our large bolt that goes through the bottom and we'll run that through the bottom hole and then through this billet. We'll tighten that up to keep that in tight against there, and then we can just slide our bolt on, or our shock onto the bolt, and then we can put our nut on just like this side is. All right, we got that side on, and of course you want your dials to a spot where you can easily get them. I just put them towards the inside so you can just go under the car. These will sit kind of like that, and these will sit, I don't think they don't sit straight up and down. They go a little bit angled. You can just reach underneath and adjust them if need be. Well, we will have to because they're all the way zeroed out. So now we can we'll drop that shock down. There's nothing to hold it. We'll put our bars back in. Now this does look pretty low. We may have to adjust that up a hole, but there is an extra hole here, so we can move both of these up a notch, which will effectively move the car up. We haven't adjusted anything here as far as ride height. And we did put our panhard bar on. That's very simple. You just slip it through. There's some slotted holes here. This end's got the same hardware, and we'll adjust that once we get weight on the car also. And there we have it, fully mocked up. Everything's on. Panhard bar, it's slotted, so we can adjust that. Like I said, once we get weight on the vehicle, we can make that flat. We can adjust it left and right to center this in the car. And our coilovers are on. Our cross members on. Our track bars are on. Pockets are on. Our torque arm is on. The upper cross members on the car. So we can either test fit all this as one right now, let the car down, which is probably what we're going to do, or I can take and start welding these on. I don't think these really are going to need adjusted at all, but we might as well check fit everything right now. So let's wheel this under the car, let the car down on it, and see how it fits. We got our assembly reeled up under the car. Obviously it's going to need moved around a little bit, but that's fine. We did loosen these bolts back up, so we got quite a bit of movement here. Allows that to come down, so as we get lower, I should be able to lift that torque arm up and go right through there. This bushing is kind of cone shaped or diamond shaped. Let me pull that off there. It does get a bolt and a washer to keep that from pulling out, but we don't need to do that yet. This just slides in there, and of course the center is tight, but it allows it to articulate in there. All right guys, this is a big moment. First time the car will have any weight on it if we can get this mocked up. So I'm gonna come around the front here. We'll kind of crawl under this tunnel here. We'll lift this torque arm up and see if we can't roll this and get this put up too far. There we go, lined right up, nice. All right, so that is in there. And we can continue to let the car down. We'll keep coming down, checking stuff as we go. Sounds like we're rubbing something. Obviously this is not the tires we're going to use. They're way too narrow for this. These are just rollers. They're actually S10 Extreme wheels, but they do fit over the brake caliper, which is good. Checking all around, everything's looking good so far through here. Like I said, that cross member is not tight, so it's definitely hanging down. But so far, it's looking good. All right, so we're all the way down on the lift. As you can see, I do have adapters to lift the body up a little bit, so it's pretty low already. I mean, it's not as low as it's going to go for sure because the lift's down and it still needs to come down. If we peek under the back here, so you can see that cross member isn't all the way up against the floorboard yet. It's got actually quite a ways, of probably at least 3 or 4 inches. Everything back here is looking really, really good so far. All right, guys, we got a jack under the back, and so far, that's our ride height. It's pretty low. It's looking really mean. We don't have our bars up into the pockets. We do have our bars, we just don't have our pockets bolted up. But if we come around to the back, how good does that look? We're sitting, the cross member sitting on the frame, on the supports, the frame rail supports that they supply. So we're sitting on those. We do have a little bit of weight. I'll jack up a little bit more, and I might even take those extensions out of the lift so we can lower the body right on down without the jack. But I kind of, I don't know, I like it a little bit higher up just so I can still get under the car. All right, that looks like enough. We'll get this lifted back up off. We got everything unhooked again. We'll get the body lifted back up, push the axle back with the suspension still hooked to it, and we'll get these reinforcement plates finalized, welded on there, and then we'll grind through here. We'll get that mocked up. We'll probably pull this cross member back off the suspension and get it in place where it needs to go, because I'm pretty satisfied with how everything looks, and go ahead and get this cross member welded on, maybe even put the through bolts in, and then just reassemble. Alright guys, why this is still up there, I took in well, it was clamped up there. I took and marked in a few spots. We're going to drill a bunch of holes in this so I can plug weld into the frame rail. Obviously we'll be able to weld around pretty much all the edges except for up behind the trunk pan. But if I drill where all these black dots are, then I can plug weld and it'll really tie this thing in nice. As you can see, we got them drilled on the sides and through the edge there, and then of course we got this side all welded up, all plug welded. We gotta do a little bit more welding. We're letting it cool down there. This side's all drilled up, mocked up. We have it set to where we need it to be, clamped up. Let's get started welded on this side. We got this side all completely welded up too. We'll just grind those down and round the corners off, but it's looking really good. As you can see, we got a lot of welds. We really tied that plate into that frame rail, and with 2 layers there, it really strengthens the frame in that area. So we'll get that ground up. Since we're already welding, I did go around and hit some more like high strength spots or high tension spots, whatever you want to call it, with some more welding. This car's, you know, gonna have some power, and the guy wants it as strong as possible. So while we're under here, we're gonna go ahead and hit a couple more spots that I didn't get before. Maybe put a couple more welds in between some of these. Some of these are good. We're just gonna go through and make sure I have all the welding completely done on the bottom side of the car here, and then we can get that cross member mocked up, get the powder coat ground off, and we'll actually get that welded into the car, and then we'll be able to grind everything down, and then we're actually going to coat the whole bottom of this car and get this, because we don't want to put all this brand new shiny stuff in and then try and paint the underside of the car. It just doesn't make any sense. So we'll get the cross member welded in, we'll coat the underside of the car, and then we'll get all the suspension bolted in for the last time. All right, since we're welding, there's a couple more spots. They spot welded all this stuff together on the firewall, but I want to go in between. Like, there's a spot weld. It goes all the way to there, to there. So to me, it needs one in between, and this is where the subframe bolts on. So this, we're going to beef this up a little bit by adding a couple more spot welds. Same with this side. Those just strengthen that a little bit more. Now we have all that welded up, it's time to take this cross member back off. It's pretty simple. We got upper shock mounts and 1 bolt here for the panhard bar. So once we get that off, we'll take and grind these areas here all the way around, and get them ready for welding. This is powder coat, obviously, but we can't weld through powder coat, not with a MIG welder. So all right, so we got all that, actually the cross member all cleaned up, ground down on either side. We got some weld through primer sprayed on these plates, and from the center of this hole back here to where they want the cross member is 21 inches. So we have that marked on both sides. We have a pole jack. Let's throw this cross member up here and start mocking it up. All right, we have this cross member pretty much located. It's not quite, this side needs to go forward a little bit. I think one of my plug welds is actually holding it up, so I'm going to drop it back down and clean some of them up. There will be a little play side to side. You just center it in the car. We come over here, we're nice and flat, tight up against, and we're right at our mark. So we'll drop this back down. While it's down, I did mark exactly where the front part of this cross member is, or roughly. And since this will be here welded in, it's pretty tight in through there. So I'm gonna get some primer and maybe some black paint and just touch up those spots, hit that now. So when we come back and paint the rest of this and do the truck coating, it'll at least have coverage underneath that cross member. So no big deal. You won't see it, and we'll still spray as much under there as we can. But at least I feel a little more comfortable with having some coverage underneath that cross member before we weld it. And there we go. We just got that blackened out. Nothing special. That cross member is going to cover all that area anyway. We just want to make sure there's some kind of coverage on there. There's our cross member jacked up to there in place as close as I think it should be. We're going to go ahead and tack it in, and we'll actually drop the car back down, roll the suspension back under, and just make sure everything's looking as it should before we weld this in. It'd be a lot easier to cut a tack weld and move it than to cut the full weld out, which would be a real pain. This goes back in the same manner as it did before. I'm confident I have this where it needs to be, as square as it can be in the car. There's adjustment pretty much everywhere, so even if you were off a tiny bit, these trailing arms right here are adjustable. And even if you're square in the car, you may have to adjust stuff. So these trailing arms are adjustable length, and that will change the rear like this way, twist in it. Of course, the track bar is adjustable, panhard bar, and that adjusts this way, left, right in the car. And then your suspension is adjustable to get the lean right, left, right. And even this torque arm is adjustable to set the pinion angle. So with that being said, we're tacked up here. Everything's looking good. It's secure even with just 4 tacks on. So we're going to put our pole jack back under, go ahead and weld these up solid. And once we get that done, let it cool down a little bit, we'll drill our holes for these plates. These top ones, just it pulls the trunk pan right down to it. The bottom, there's a shim that goes in behind here, and we'll put there's another square plate that goes in the trunk floor. So a little dirty, but these go in the trunk floor. Here's the shim that goes under the bottom side of it towards the gas tank strap, and then of course we have all of our hardware here that will through bolt all this stuff. All right guys, we got this all fully welded in both sides. It's nice and stout now. We did go ahead and drill our holes also. So we're gonna go on the trunk side here, and you can see right where the holes come through. We're gonna go ahead and spray some blacken that out to protect that, get our plates put on, and get this bolted up nice and solid. We got that sprayed up, nothing fancy, just some black spray paint to blacken that out, just to get some coverage between those plates. And when we coat this trunk floor, we won't have to take them off, it'll already be covered up. All right guys, as you can see, we got all the grinding done. It looks pretty good. We got all the inner and outer wheel wells all cleaned up, scuffed down. We are going to do that textured coating on there so we don't have to worry about getting those fine scratches out. But we got everything ground down. I was covered head to toe with all the grinding all along here. I'll slow down so it doesn't pan so bad. On the outside to it, of course, it bubbles the paint up as you weld through. Across here and even up top, we got the firewall prepped. And we even got the door jambs prepped. So we do have to run down and get get the coating we're gonna put on this, get some epoxy primer, and get some more seam seal. All right guys, we gotta run down to the auto parts store to pick up some supplies for the Camaro. And this one hasn't been out in a long time. So let's go ahead, jump in, fire it up. Stir it up.